Recording in progress. Okay.
Excellent.
Okay, good stuff. So where do we start? Hello, and welcome to the Rock Rose tasting session. I'm really excited to be doing this. This is actually an association with International Scottish Gin Day. It's a project that I'm involved with Rock Rose to do a tasting session. And the idea is you can have these samples at home and taste along and learn a bit more about the brand, a bit more about Scottish gin. I'm also going to be putting this up on our Crafty YouTube channel. There's a collection of all sorts of videos on there as well, so you'll also be able to see it there as well as on my page. So just to introduce myself very quickly, my name is Bernadette Pamplin. I am a spirits writing judge. I've been doing it for getting on to 6 years now. I've got my fingers in lots of pies. I thoroughly enjoy it all, and that's really enough about me. What I'm more interested in today is introducing you to Martin of Rock Rose. Martin.
Hello, thank you. I'm Martin Murray. I'm one of the co-founders of Dunnet Bay Distillers. I founded the company with my wife, Claire, 8 years ago. Feels like yesterday. We set up the business to really do one thing, which is to create 2 jobs so that we could live in an area that we were brought up in and that we loved, and also do something we were really passionate about. So distilling gin and vodka, what's not to like?
Exactly. Lovely, good stuff. And you guys have been on my radar for quite a long time with regards to sort of Scottish gins. I did find when I first got into gin a few years ago, I wasn't so aware of them, and that was my own fault. And I discovered this when I visited Scotland, and that's what got me interested in finding out more about them, because I realised what an incredible history there is with regards to gin in Scotland, which sometimes, people like me on the south coast, we don't always hear of that. We tend to focus more on London. So I'd love to hear a few thoughts of yours on Scottish gins, if that's okay.
Yeah, we really started our journey just at the start of when Scottish craft gins were starting to become a thing. So before that, you did have great Scottish distilleries making bigger volume production gins, and there wasn't really the craft scene that there was with breweries. So we started out in 2013, 2014, then was our first production date, and we noticed that there was certainly some more traction, there was more interest, people were looking for different options, and we're right up in the north of Scotland, right in the Highlands of Scotland, where all the lovely whiskies are made, and people are still surprised to find gin being made by a Scottish distiller. So we talk about the history on our tastings, and we also talk about how far Scottish gin has come. So I could name 5 distilleries that started up in 2014, a similar scale to us. It's been great watching their journey along with our journey, but it's also been great watching new distilleries start up, and then also seeing the gin category as a whole just take off, and seeing the experimentation. And it's just brilliant. As a gin fan, it's great to be a producer, but it's also great to be a consumer and see the wonderful expressions that are coming out, wonderful experimentation. And it's just a great time to be a gin drinker.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with you, especially, it is a creative art, distilling. And it's been fascinating to see these different ideas coming about and these new processes and different ways of doing things, because you do always want, oh, how about if I try this? How about if I try that? And I find that's the very nature of it. And I really, really appreciate it. And it's interesting how it kind of ebbs and flows, because sometimes you get this sort of growth of creativity, but then you get people, well, what category is this? And it gets a bit formal. And then you sort of find some stuff dies up, but then you get whole categories now coming, whole new things. And I think it's an amazing time to be a gin drinker. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Before, if you talked about a vacuum distilled gin, people wouldn't have heard of that. If you talked about some of the botanicals are now being used, you wouldn't have heard of them being used. But it's this category or this craft that has allowed people to go off and explore and try, and it's great. It's great for everyone. It's such great fun to do as a distiller.
Yeah, it is. And definitely, I know, the people in the industry are kind of one of my favorite things about it. When you go to conferences or tasting sessions and you get to see each other, and it's just a really nice bunch, and everybody really loves what they're doing and have a good time. So it's quite a lovely industry to be in as well.
Yeah, it is. I think there's still this opportunity to discover, which I think is such a lovely feeling, to think that you've been in the gin industry for 7 years, you've tasted what you think most different styles of gin, and then something else comes up and you try something different. And I think that discovery is brilliant for consumers, but it's also brilliant for distillers. It feels like there's still things to be tried, things to be experimented with, and that's what keeps us going. You know, making Rock Rose is great. It's a rhythm or routine, but it's that trial, that experimentation that is really what we love. So we've got vacuum distillation equipment, we've got maceration, filters, we've got all these things that we can play with, and that's the part that our distillation team love the most. And why not? Why wouldn't you? It's great. Yeah. You get to taste gin at work all day.
Yeah. Oh, it's absolutely wonderful. And I think it's worth mentioning actually that with you guys, you know, you set yourself a bit of a program, because you do like a seasonal edition. So where you get some distilleries that, you know, they might bring out one or two and leave it for a bit, you know, and then bring out another one when they're ready. You know, you guys are kind of, it's literally every year. You've got spring, summer, autumn, winter, and your customers are expecting those every year.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting about that is that we know the botanicals change depending on the climate the year before. When we've harvested them, we know that they can change with small changes. I'm just going to wait for a second to come back to this, because they're just about to load a pallet on and it makes a racket. So you have to cut this back.
There you go, behind the scenes action. You know?
It is behind the scenes action. And this is the last noise you'll hear today, is that one pallet is going off to Henley-on-Thames. So it's got to get down there for Monday, which seems like a yonk away. But when you're as far north as we are, the logistics that have to line up to get it there at that time is, it's not always easy. You think it is, and with modern, the amount of transit that's going up and down the road, you think it'd be straightforward, but it's not, and it hasn't been for 7 years. It's always been one of those challenges that we deal with on a regular basis, to be honest. Yeah, logistics, not always a bit of a challenge. Yeah, absolutely. I'm just thinking he's about loaded up. I'm trying to listen to the last movement. Oh, don't you worry. I think it's quite nice sometimes, you know, people do like to see a little bit of what's going on in the background. Well, that's fine if you're happy with the background noise. Yeah. I was talking to somebody recently about doing one of these type of things, and it was sort of in their factory. Somebody else suggested maybe a walk around, and she's like, you're really not going to be very interested. Like, what you can actually see when you go around. Like, oh, you have to do a really good tidy up as well. That's the other thing, you know, you're just so used to like everything happening during the day, and then you go to do a talk and you're like, oh, I forgot to put that back, and there's a screwdriver. And, oh no, this is not what it was designed for. But it's a reality. You're in a working environment. You know, you're in a place where we've been making gin today. Kevin finished distilling about 3:30. So you're in a distillery that's just produced gin. It's been alive with activity, and then at 3:30 we've turned it around into this tasting. And I think that's important for people to know. This is a busy place, and that's why we do things at the back end of the day. It just allows us to be able to not have so much background noise. But of course, when you plan things, something always happens. Always. It's the nature of the beast. I think if anything, the last couple of years of everybody having to adapt to Zoom calls, it's made people a little more forgiving of that stuff. So you always used to have your mask on at work or doing this and this, everything, you know, proper. And I think nowadays people have seen enough videos of, you know, kids running around in the background and this and this. It's like, you know, life goes on around all this stuff. There's a lovely authenticity that where you're allowing people into your life a little bit as well. And I like that because you can form relationships quicker if you can see other bits about it. It's not just kind of one-dimensional. It's not just work. No, absolutely. Yeah, you get to see a bit more of the person, and I think that's quite valuable, actually. Absolutely. So aren't always a stopped. I'll tell you more about the seasonal edition. So seasonal editions came about because our first employee was our gardener, Hannah. Hannah's got a PhD, so we can't garden in the winter. So we wanted Hannah to stay with us, and Hannah wanted to find ways to be useful. She was really interested in flavour, experimentation. So with her science background, we taught her how to run a wee still. And she was able to then go and plant things, grow them, harvest them, distill them, taste them. And I think that's just amazing. And with her work at the biodiversity group, she was able to find out more about what was growing in Caithness, and also allowed us to kind of widen our horizons. We weren't just going to focus on our own botanical gardens. We were going to look at what grows on cliffs, what grows in forests, fields, higher up, down at sea level, this kind of thing that was really interesting. So Hannah did that, and then we realized, I remember this well, she discovered coltsfoot growing in our path, and coltsfoot just looks like a wee small baby dandelion, but it's really sweet. So it was used in confectionery to make coltsfoot rock, and I love the smell of it. Now, we didn't have enough of that kicking about to go out and say this is going to be our next flavor expression and it'll be available to everyone all over the world. We knew that our capacity was going to be restricted, so that's what we did with the seasonal edition. We just decided we'd do 3 or 4 batches using ingredients from around the area, and what we do is we take people on a kind of little journey around the gin flavour wheel. So our spring edition is coltsfoot, which is sweet, and then we've got things like dandelion in there and gorse, and that takes you into a slightly more floral part of the gin wheel. So sweet and floral is where we start with spring. Spring is the hardest because our spring goes all the way right up to May weather-wise. It's really not great up here for growing things in March. And then in summer, we like to give ourselves a challenge. So we grow pineapple sage, we grow lemon verbena, lemon thyme. So we made a citrus profile gin, but without any citrus. And that then, because of those herbal notes, has a kind of herbal backbone. So that's taking you into citrus and herbal part of the gin flavour wheel.
Yeah.
And then with autumn, we could have just done berries. Like berries would have been a great, nice, popular gin, but it wasn't much of a challenge. So we added berries and spice. So trying to grow spice was going to be our challenge here. And we managed it. We grew Vietnamese coriander and we grew nasturtium flowers, and they're brilliant. They work so well with that sweetness, that complementary bite to the sweetness of the raspberries and blackberries.
Yeah. Oh, that's fab. And it's actually, that's probably something that not a lot of people realise is how much of the stuff you grow. So I know you mentioned foraging, and that's sort of, that's sort of explained. But then there's also how much you actually grow yourselves and the challenge of doing that in the climate.
Yeah, that's right. And we grow holy grass for our vodka here, and that was like a failed experiment for 2 years in a row. Holy grass looks like grass, so we ended up like, I think it was the second year we thought we failed, and we decided just to clear it out and try again. And it was only as we were removing it we found some holy grass which smells of vanilla when you're touching it, growing in amongst the other grass. And since then we've been able to then take it back and grow it more, and we now grow it here. But that's like the thing, these things are not straightforward to grow, and we've got lots of climates in our garden. We've got a geodome, which is nice and warm and humid, and then we've got a pond and a bog, so we grow lots of bog myrtle and mint, like water mint, apple mint, strawberry mint. And then we've got rockery, so it's right dry, so rhodiola rosea, thyme, juniper all grows there. And then we've got planters and trees and bushes, and it's quite amazing what actually grows here. And it's quite a small site, but we've just put a few labels and it looks amazing. It looks really, really good.
Oh, it sounds fantastic. I bet it smells amazing as well.
Yeah, it's really nice. We've just been out and we've had some fennel, and fennel's just amazing. Love fennel. I should do more with it. And the last one in the seasonal editions I should have mentioned was the winter edition. We take pine buds, and the pine buds contain pinene, which juniper contains the same flavour compound. So we make a juniper-led gin using trees. So it's a bit of a trick, but it's really nice. And the pine buds also contain limonene, so it's got that citrus notes as well.
That's really cool. There's some very interesting stuff with that going on at the moment, with sort of gas chromatography, which is, for people watching, it is essentially a machine that can tell you what compounds are in a substance. And yeah, there's been some really interesting stuff going on with that. Like there's a chap called Ulrich at Woodlove Distillery, and he's actually found something that grows in his garden that has the same compounds as nutmeg and clove. Wow. So he uses that rather than having to ship it in or do anything. He's just got that at home, and he's used this to find that out. And there's just so many things like that it's fantastic stuff when you start getting down to that compound element. It's really, really interesting.
It's really interesting, and I guess as well what you find out is that you find out about the historical uses of these things. So even like when we looked into things like southernwood, we could see that things like that were grown here, and some things would be used for hops. So hops weren't available in Scotland, so they use other things to make the beer a little bit better. And I think that's really interesting to know that just because these things were not scalable, they were used in the past. And it's just nice to know, really, really nice to know, really interesting.
Yeah, it is. It's fascinating. You can get overly geeky on it, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Shall we move on to a little bit of tasting? Are you tasting along as well?
Yeah, yeah, I've got the tasting bottles. I've got the big bottles.
There you go. Good stuff. That's what I like to hear. So I'm going to start off with the original.
Yeah, good idea. That's what I'm going to go for.
Start with the original. Were you one of the first to bring out the gin in the porcelain, the sort of ceramic?
Good question. I think we were around. I'm trying to think. With Eden Mill, we were close. I think we released ours online first, and then I think Eden Mill maybe beat us to the production. I'm not sure that timeline. I'm never just clear. I know that we released it out as an image. I think because of Delees building this place, I think they probably just pipped us to it. But it's a big part of our product.
Yeah, it is. It's something that I've certainly always associated with you guys. That when I first saw the bottle, it stood out so much for it. And we can talk about. So I did sort of think about the weight of the bottle, etc. But that brings us on to sustainability, which we can talk about a bit later.
Yeah, no, that's fine. What we like about the bottle is that it's hand waxed and hand numbered, so you get to see there's a team behind the business. So I like that you see the name of the distiller who made this batch.
Yeah, it is. It's absolutely lovely, and the designs on the front as well are really quite beautiful.
Yeah, we worked with Pocket Rocket in Stirling, and that was Claire's part. I was the distiller. Claire was the creative person, so I left her to design the bottle, and I designed the gin. And I tell the story. I probably people are fed up with hearing about it. At the dinner table one night, I said to her that if we don't sell a single bottle of gin, it's because she did a bad job of the design. She replied to me, if you don't sell a second bottle of gin, it means nobody likes your gin.
That is a very valid point. It's generally
I've never mentioned it to her again because I was completely wrong.
It is, no, you're quite right. It's generally the bottle is what's the first purchase, and then the gin is the second. You are right.
Yeah, so I designed this recipe. I wanted to create something that was in keeping with my favorite style of gin. So it's very light, very delicate. We use a vapor infusion process, which you can see over my shoulder actually with a nice graphic there. Yeah. It creates that delicate gin style of gin. I love the nose. It's just a light juniper nose, slight elements of citrus coming through. Yeah,
it is something that I picked up on when I tried it for the first time, because it's very pleasing to somebody that likes a traditional gin. There's a good healthy dose of juniper in there, but it does have this sort of delicate nature, a little bit of an elegance to it, and it's other stuff to discover. And that's something that I find a lot with Scottish gins. There's just some quite amazing botanicals up there. You can get some really amazing sort of floral and savoury notes. And I sort of found if you were looking at a style, if Scottish gin had a style as such, I would definitely put an argument forward that it would be going towards those sort of notes as a general overarching idea. And this does it beautifully. It's really lovely.
And the kind of hero botanical, or where we get the name from, is Rhodiola rosea, which grows in the cracks of the cliffs here in Caithness. So it's right on the north coast. It's exposed to wind, rain, salty water, cold temperatures. So nothing really grows on those cliffs, but this does. And when you harvest it, it's got this lovely earthy Turkish delight. And when you distill that, you still get those light elements of the rose, but there's this real earthiness to it. And I love that. I love that earthiness to it.
Yeah, it's really, really lovely. So what would be a good serve for this one?
Oh, so we, as a husband and wife team, slightly disagree when it comes to the original edition. So all of our other serves we're kind of on the same page with, but with Rock Rose, I like my gin slightly punchier. I like a higher ABV when it comes to gin and tonic. So I like it maybe 2 parts tonic to 1 part gin. And then I have toasted rosemary because I'm all over that earthiness. I like the smokiness from the rosemary as well when it's toasted. And that is my profile. I really enjoy that. Claire likes something a lot more refreshing. So she'll maybe go 3 parts tonic to 1 part gin. And then she'll have orange peel with it. And the orange peel or grapefruit peel just lifts it, makes it lighter, more refreshing. Very summery drink as well. The other thing you could argue with the serves is that one's probably more suited to summer, one's more suited to the winter. But I love that. I love that when we go to our customers, they'll all have their own perfect serves. And some people will have the rosemary, some will have the orange, some will have it together because they're complementary flavors. So it's really, really interesting.
Oh, it's fascinating. It's again something you can get very geeky over. It's a long time ago I realised I'm never going to say to anybody you shouldn't drink something like that. You know, however anybody wants to drink their drink, it's just so important to let people have it how they like. And it's really fascinating how you get these ideas of served. I think it's helpful to have that as a starting point sometimes.
Yeah.
But just the creativity that goes on with home of trying it with different things and working out what works for you, that's all part of the fun, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, that was our goal at the start, was to create a gin that we both liked, because if we weren't the advocates of our own product, then it was going to be difficult.
Yeah.
So we used to make bottles of gin, take them home and have them on our shelf, and quite often they'd be great for the first weekend, great for the second weekend, but by the third weekend we were going back to something that was tried and or more preferable.
Yeah.
So when we did Rock Rose, it was the one that we went back to. And even now, you know, when I'm in a bar and I have the original edition, because now I'm more coastal and navy. When I have the original edition in the bar, it's really nice, because like, oh, I really like that, and I'm like, well, of course you do. You made it, you know. Yeah. So it's a surprise.
No, there's a lot to be said for that as well, because I know my friend at Fun Flower Gin, she's Anisha. They made a gin and they liked it, and then they decided, well, maybe we should try and sell it. But the whole point at the start was they were just making it for themselves, and they really liked it. And it was only off the back of that, oh, maybe someone else will like it. And it's just gone on to be quite successful. But there was never any kind of business intention at the very start. It was just like, no, we just want to make this for us. Like,
yeah, that's right. And that's the way a lot of craft distilleries start out. And
yeah.
I remember thinking when we sold the first batch and it went out the door for delivery, I remember sitting there thinking, what if nobody likes it? And I thought, well, it doesn't really matter, because we like it and we'll have just a brilliant closing party.
Oh, well, drinks all around.
And it was really nervous, because, you know, we built up a reputation on social media, Claire done a lot of promotion, and that was great. You feel like a great buzz. But then when the gin left here and was being delivered, I remember thinking, what if nobody likes it? We've built a whole reputation on these platforms that could just cut us dead straight away. So I remember pressing F9 the whole time, and like delivery time, and in the evening when we thought people would be drinking it. And it was just like, what did they think? What did they think? And fortunately, people liked the style of gin that we made. It was popular, and we were really grateful that it was received that way, because it would have been a pretty big headache if it hadn't been.
Yeah, just a tad. Oh no, I think, to be honest, looking at what you've done with them, it doesn't surprise me that it was well received. It is a very well made gin, and it's presented beautifully.
Thank you.
It's just, no, you're welcome. And it's got a lovely idea behind it as well. We've, you know, craft is it's quite a subjective word, I find sometimes. You know, it's bandied about quite a lot. And it's definitely an essence of craft distilling, but it's just interesting to how crafty people get sometimes when they say they do it. And obviously with you guys, you're very hands-on. You're doing so much of what makes your gin.
I think that's a great thing about the craft distilleries, is that when you visit them, you really get that sense of craftsmanship and also authenticity, that they're actually saying that they're doing this, and then you visit them and you say, yeah, they're living up to my expectations of what I expect a craft high quality product to be. Because it's okay to say craft, but you have to remember that the people are putting their heart and soul into these products, and they're really, really good. Yeah,
absolutely. I think I was going to go off on a tangent now, and I probably won't do that. Still continuing about something that's probably not so relevant. To keep it short and concise, I would say that, you know, people buying off a person rather than a company, there's a huge amount of difference in that. Somebody said to me once that, you know, if they've bought a bottle from a distiller, they're probably going to buy that bottle again. But if they've just bought it from a site, they've had no connection really with the person that made it. I suppose that's the job of the branding, to make you have that. But if they don't, they probably won't buy it again, you know, because there's ones they want to try. So having that personal connection, I think, is actually really important. And if you don't necessarily have the capacity to see people face to face through events and stuff, like conveying that through your branding is a really important job.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's key. And I think it works from both sides. It's a chance for the distiller to tell about what they do, but for the consumer, it's really a chance to actually see the work that goes in behind it. It's not just quite as straightforward as it turns up in a bottle on a shelf or in a box on a Friday. It's that work. So I think it's really good that people get that chance to visit, but also to see behind the scenes online. It's just brilliant these days.
Yes, awesome. Should we move on to the next one?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry, I don't know if you've quite finished. I don't want to rush you. No. Right, so here we have the Old Tom, pink grapefruit Old Tom, which is just such a lovely idea, because, you know, sort of with the history of Old Toms, they're generally You know, there's a slight sweetness to them or their calf sage, and the whole concept of it is it's to, back then would have been to hide impurities and flavour, whereas nowadays obviously it's just great gin, but it's become a style. And I just love the fact that you've used pink grapefruit with this, because it's got such a tang. Not it's a very delicate ness, but the character of pink grapefruit is quite tart. And it's just, I found that a really interesting idea to bring that in with something that has a slightly sweet profile.
Yeah, absolutely. And it didn't quite happen by accident, but it didn't happen by design from our part. We did a design your own label competition for, what was that, was back in 2016.
Yeah.
And the lucky lady who won the prize got 12 bottles of her own gin. And we wanted to make the gin to her style. So we asked her what her favorite profile was, and pink grapefruit was the style of gin she liked. So we tried distilling pink grapefruit, and we didn't really ever get it to work for us in a way that it would still be a traditional London dry gin or a traditional distilled gin, juniper led, but then also have that pink grapefruit profile. So we started to play about, and we used muscovado sugar, and it ends up being an Old Tom because we use the muscovado sugar to draw out the flavors of the pink grapefruit.
It's such an amazing thing, because when you say draw out, that's really the right wording for it, because it's so incredibly well integrated. You've got two quite different aspects of flavour, but they go hand in hand really, really well. I think that's a real testament to the distilling.
Yeah, and I think that's a distiller's job, is to try and find that balance with it being a gin, but also having that distinct profile. We peel 60 organic pink grapefruits here, so it's not a very popular job for the staff to do when we're making more batches, but the place smells amazing, and it's such a bright, fresh smell, and that's what we're trying to capture and pull into this drink. And you get it on the nose straight away. There's almost like a slight sweetness on the nose as well from the muscovado sugar, and we use muscovado sugar in our slow gin as well, and I just love it. It brings something extra. You know, we could use the regular sugar for sweetening, but it doesn't have any character. It just brings sweetness, and that's it. But with muscovado sugar, it brought this little extra to the drink, and we'll see that with the Citrus Coastal, where we were playing with salts and learned about salt, and again we brought something extra to the drink.
Oh yeah, that's lovely. I have a lot of muscovado sugar at home actually. It's kind of caramelized picture of the flavour, and if I have coffee, I'll generally have that in it as opposed to normal sugar, because it does bring an extra element of flavour.
Yeah, we've played with honey as well before, heather honey, and it's great that it can perform the same job or do the job that it's supposed to do and bring that sweetness, but also bring some character. And I love that. I think, you know, that's the real interesting part when you come to taking on an Old Tom style, is that you can then just change it and tweak it a little bit, and it still stays as an Old Tom, but it brings a little bit more of its own identity to the category.
Yeah, lovely. And I think that's the thing as well. I find one of the many things I find really fascinating about distilling is, you know, when you essentially, from the distillation of, say, even just one botanical, like the point in which you cut the hearts and the heads can change the overall flavour because of what compounds you've got in there, and then what ABV it's at, that changes the way things come through. And then when you start thinking about marrying that with other botanicals, and one botanical can change the way another one works, there's just so much to it. It's just hugely fascinating.
It is really fascinating, and I think, you know, when we were doing our heads cut here, we were always like sampling every sort of 100 mils to get it right. And now it's like, the way I say it, it's like waiting for a bus. Then the first time we did the heads cut, we were way too early, and we worked out where we had to be. So next time we kind of arrive, we take our cut closer to where it should be, and you just get better and better knowing where you should be, and you have a smaller window, but you still have that window where you have to check it. And when we do the tails cut, we're in tricky territory because we get quite a lot of burn from cinnamon and cassia. Like it is quite a harsh burn that's at the end of the run, but we also get the rose coming through. So we're trying to cut the rose in and keep the burn out. And if you leave it too late, you'll get all the rose and a bit of burn, but if you take it too early, you get none of the rose. So it's that element of craft where we're doing it by smell, by taste at the time, and yeah, it's a bit of a skill.
It is an absolute skill. It's completely a skill. I'm gonna maybe look at this one. There we go. So I love navy strength gins. I don't know if this is potentially because I drink a lot of neat gin, because I judge it, but I sort of, it's gotten to the point, I suppose, because your taste buds adapt, and and just your general, flavors that you like and dislike, they change. And I found, because I do sort of have to drink a lot of neat gin, I'm not too fussed with watering mine down myself. I will drink quite a lot of neat gin at home, and if I'm having a mixed gin, I will generally have a navy strength, because it's kind of like moving to black coffee, I guess. You kind of
Yeah.
just got a strong profile. So I've gone down that territory. And I don't know about you, with navy strength gins, I found it really interesting because, a few years ago, you would try them and they were just so incredibly closed up. You couldn't really get much flavour out of them neat. But in recent years, you started to get these really incredible, rich, flavourful, neat navy strengths. And I find that really interesting. I'm not sure why that started happening or how. I don't want to put you on the spot there.
No, I think it's really interesting. I think what you've described there is almost like my life in whiskey, where I started off at the lower strength and I didn't get much out of the higher strength ABVs, the cask strengths to start with. But as I kind of progressed up the ABVs and started to try different casks, I then got a better appreciation, and I love the navy strength. Navy strength neat to me is just a nightcap. I love it. I wouldn't say it's going to be my session drink, and it's not going to be, I'm not going to a party with a bottle of navy strength. It's going to end very well, but I love navy strength just like this. We're just having it purely neat. And what is really great is it's the same recipe as Rock Rose, exactly the same, different cuts and different dilution, obviously, but you're picking it way more spice in this.
This is what I touched on earlier, where how the profile changes. I think it was I tried it off. No, I think it was Mermaid Gin. They brought out the navy strength when I tried it, and when I first tried them both, I didn't quite get it. It was the same botanical recipe. So I know it's actually the same recipe. It's just brought down differently.
Yeah, exactly. It's that ABV that lends itself to doing that. So I find that with this, I'm picking out more of the cinnamon and cassia, but there's also then this real it's like sweetness in the middle as well, which is in Rock Rose, but it's not as pronounced. It's like the taste profile has been amplified, and some parts just chopped and taken out. And the definite that spice is something I'm drawn to. I always just want to capture it and keep it in my mouth. I just love that. It's almost like the pepperiness from the grains of paradise, and then the cinnamon and cassia that I talked about earlier. The best parts of that are shown in this drink.
Yeah, it is lovely. And you're right, there is like a sweetness in the middle, which is you don't get so much of with navy strengths, because they do start to, some do get quite fiery. So it's really lovely. It's a lovely quality for it to have, because again, you do tend to find with regards to mouthfeel and stuff, they're quite thin. But this has got a really nice round mouthfeel as well.
Yeah, we designed this because we were looking for a gin to stand up in a Negroni, and Rock Rose is more delicate, more light, and it just doesn't always work in a Negroni for me. But the navy strength definitely does. You've got that stronger flavor profile that works in a Negroni. The only thing is it's 57%, so it's not going to be a Negroni all night. And I love this as a Negroni, as well as having it neat. They're my two ways I would drink this, to be honest. I just think they work in both profiles. That sort of spice in a Negroni is just lovely with the bitterness.
Yeah, you definitely need a gin with a bit of welly, I think, to stand up to any sort of Campari or bitters, and depending on what vermouth you have in it as well. Negroni is it's up there with one of my favourite drinks, but I really have to be in the mood. It's for me, it's like that is my nightcap. That's my last one. Where do you go after a Negroni? Yeah. That's really nice. So with that one, is that got a particular serve you'd like to suggest, or is that just with tonic?
We always recommend a gin and tonic serve as well with it. For me, a navy strength is a little bit lost in a gin and tonic. I would have it neat all the way. If you want to try it with ice, it's quite interesting because you get that gradual dilution.
Yes.
So you can change the flavor profile of the gin. But I quite like the navy strength just in your hands, warm. You're warming up the drink and it's just starting to flash off, and you just see the spirit evolve as you're sipping it. And it's like whiskey. You really get an appreciation for what's in the spirit as you're drinking it, and it brilliant way to understand flavor profile of gin and how it changes with temperature.
Yeah, I love that that's happening with gin now, because it was very much the case for a while that it was just G&Ts and mixture gins and cocktails, and you didn't really get many people that would just drink it neat, and I just personally, I feel if somebody's put so much love and time into making that as it is, I do understand someone made to be mixed, but not all of them. I just think if something's that wonderful, I kind of want to drink that on its own, you know, and just really enjoy that on its own. And that is very much the whiskey sort of mentality. And it's really nice to see that crossing over now into gin.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I get my own personal experiences. I get a better appreciation of the spirit neat, but I get a good enjoyment of the spirit served the way that it's recommended, or if I play with it a bit. So I love to drink Navy strength neat like that, but equally I'll have a gin and tonic, perfect serve, and I'm happy all day long. You know, that's really making me really have a good time. And but I think when we do our experiments here, we always try everything neat. We'll try it from sort of like 57% all the way down to 40% to see where we think it lands best. And I'll give you an example. We were going to do a cask aged gin to put into to make slow gin. So make a cask aged slow gin, which we thought was going to be really fun. We found a flavor profile we loved. And then as we were diluting the spirit that had been aged, we just fell in love with it at a certain ABV, and we just said, right, scrap the slow gin plans. This is going out as a product. It's not ready yet because we've got no labels or anything yet. But it's that way where we had a plan, but actually our love for the way it's turned out and the strength that we've sampled it at, it just overrules everything else, where we want people to taste it like that, and that's it.
Yeah. That's lovely. That reminds me very much of a friend of mine. She's not a sculptor, she's a sculptor. But the way she basically sort of works with rock, and she says to her it's like the design's already in there. She's not decided what it's going to be. She just goes at it until it becomes this shape and she realizes that's what it was meant to be. And it's kind of, that's a similar thing, I guess, where you're not controlling. You wanted it to do this, but actually it's doing that, and that's working really well. So you're happy to let it go with that flow. And then
absolutely. I think, and it was unanimous as well. And that's the great thing, is that you're doing a tasting here, 3 or 4 of us, and sometimes it doesn't work like that. Sometimes it isn't unanimous. But with this one, it was like, whoa, stop! That's it. We love this, and I like that. I like the fact that we didn't start off with it has to be a barley slow gin, and if it turns out better somewhere along the line, then no, we have to stick to the end goal. We stick to the fact that we want to make a product that people will love, and that's it. End of. So if we have to change labels, if we have to change what we're doing somewhere along because we think it's better and people will enjoy it more, then let's do that. Yeah,
fantastic. That's really, really good. Now, shall we move on to the? I'm keeping an eye on the time as well. Shall we move on to the Citrus Coastal edition?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've got pretty poor for this one.
Yeah, lovely. Well, thank you so much for sending this out. Yeah, super pleased to get this box in the post office.
This is just another one of our learnings where we hadn't considered this style of gin, but we were given the challenge to do it, and we love challenges, so we wanted to see how we could make it work. How could we make a coastal gin that had something more to it than just being a salty version of Rock Rose, which would have been really easier, but it's not the way we do things. No. So first off, we start by taking all the different types of seaweed that grow up here and distilling them and seeing how they turn out. I can tell you that some of them turn out just really fishy, and that's not a great look for a gin. But we got kelp from the local area, working with shore seaweed, and distilled that. What you get on the nose is it's walking on the beach here in Dunnet. You know, I sit and close my eyes, and I think this is a coastal walk to me all day long with the nose.
It's beautiful. There's a lot of layers there as well.
Yeah, because we've got lemon verbena in there, and then we've got licorice salt. So again, we went for the levels of what kind of salt do we want to put in. You know, obvious answer is just to put in like table salt and make it slightly salty with that. But we didn't. We looked outside that. We looked at who, as a local producers, that we could work with that had a skill for this and had great products. And the Hebridean Mustard Company produces lovely licorice salt, and we tried it at different concentrations in our gin and found this one that really worked. And then we tried it with kelp and we loved it even more, had to adjust it. And then we add the lemon onto it. It's just like a great combination.
Yeah, it really is a great combination. It's quite interesting, the idea of licorice salt, because licorice has obviously got that sweetness to it, and like licorice sherbet, it makes me think of that when you get like salted caramel and stuff, that sort of idea of sweet and savoury together.
Yeah,
Um,
there's a real earthiness to it as well with the salt. It's got a beautiful sweetness on the nose, but then when you actually have it to taste it, there's a slight earthiness with it, and it complements the kelp, but the verbena just lifts everything. The lemon verbena
Yeah.
really is probably the best botanical we grow here in my mind, because when you rub it, it just smells so lemony. It's so light. It's not like lemon peel where you can have some bitterness. The nose on it is just all lemon freshness, and a nice lemon freshness.
Yeah, it's wonderful. Yeah, this is a beautiful, beautiful expression.
And you know, part of the ethos of our business here is that we'll always try and use our business to help others, because 7 years ago or 8 years ago, other businesses helped us along the way. So we're very mindful that we should be able to help other businesses. So you'll see that in the past we've done Artist Edition, where we've supported local artists. We use licorice salt and the kelp from local producers that we've been able to tell their story with. And for us, that's really important. We're really a fixture in our local community, and we want to use that to help others. We are a fragile rural economy, so anything that we can do to help other jobs and other startups, we'll do it. The answer is yes. It's just, how can we do that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the idea of being strong together, isn't it? I tend to find that with like sort of the writing community and the spirit side, you get to know each other, and it's sort of networking and sort of ways you can help each other. It's such a fundamental part. And I don't think you get taught enough about that when you're younger, how important it is to work with, and how, if you work with other people, how many other opportunities that will bring, and how you just help each other and you become stronger for it. And I think, yeah, a few more people would benefit from learning to live that way. I think
and you know, it's I think that's what you get with the smaller distilleries, is that they are more accessible to the local communities, but they're also more integrated. So when lockdown happened last year, we produced sanitizer and we distributed it, and we paid the duty. So we were paying about 10 quid every bottle of sanitizer that we were giving out to the care homes and hospitals. And for us, it was the easiest decision ever to make, because could we do it? Yes. Could we afford to do it? Yes. Well, what's the reason for not doing it? Well, we didn't have one, so we just went and did it. And we then turned our shop into a community store where we had vegetables, pasta, and we did doorstep deliveries for vulnerable people in our local village. And you know, that again was a really easy decision. You know, we wanted to help. We had people who could help, and you know, it's just, okay, let's do this. Let's find a way to make it work. And again, that was just being able to help out people around when they needed help. And I think you get that. You'll have seen it with all the other distilleries doing sanitizer, and then they had other ways to support communities. I think it's brilliant. It's so refreshing.
Yeah, it is. It's lovely when it's just nice to do something for someone else a lot of the time. You know, it's a lovely thing. It's a very, very good thing. Thinking about being mindful about doing the right thing, I'm going to move on. I'm going to use that as a nice segue into the sustainability aspect, if that's okay. So you kindly sent me this. So the whole idea behind this is a new sustainable packaging. So you get your bottle, you get your gin in this, which you can get replaced. But when you're done, you know what I love about this, which makes it so very simple, because that's generally what people need. They need it to make it as simple as you can, really. You just stick it back in the Royal Mail letterbox, no envelope, and they will send it back to you, and you guys do all the rest. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So this again came from customer feedback. They loved their bottles and wanted to keep them. So I wanted to find a way to make that work and try to think of ways that it could help us with our goals to reduce our environmental impact. So we worked closely with PA Consulting, and the goal was simple: create a fully recyclable free post refill pouch. And that hadn't been done before. We were the first to do this. Royal Mail had never approved a refill pouch to have a free post address directly printed onto the packaging. So with my background in chemical engineering, I was able to make a successful argument over quite a long period of time that we should be allowed to do that. And they approved it, and we printed straight on the pouch. The pouches save a huge amount in transport emissions, because we're able to get 1,000 pouches in a box compared to a pallet of bottles, which is just under 1,000. And the weight of that box is about 12% of the full weight of the pallet. So it saves an enormous amount, and it's been very popular. Our customers ask for it. We deliver. what they asked for. And we then wanted to see if they um, um, used it, and it's been our best seller on our website for the last 18 months. It's really been a big success. So we launched the Refill Rewards Club, where we send a pouch based on a frequency that the customer wants, and we put in extra goodies as well. So that's our way of incentivizing people to refill and return. We've not quite perfected that loop yet, because we're now monitoring the refill returns. So we've got an environmental manager now, Sarah, who's looking at all the ways we can improve things. So by monitoring these returns, we'll get a return rate and we'll be able to measure it, and then we'll try and take ways, introduce methods to increase that return rate. So we might incentivize, we might do educational parts, but the ideal would be up in the high 90s as a return rate. And that's part of our mission now, is to try and we've got the product, we've got the solution, we want to improve on it. And we've been challenging HMRC for 18 months, because the duty stamps legislation, which is really dull and boring, won't allow us to do this in the on-trade at the moment because of the ABV and the size of product. So if the ABV was not in the spirits realm, we could do it. If the size of bottle was 200 mils, we'd be able to refill them all day long. So we're challenging this, and it's really difficult, because we think it's the right way to go. It's going to save a huge amount of waste from bars. Lots of bottles from bars end up in landfill because the recycling's full. So we're trying to address something that's a real issue, and we're hopeful we'll get there, but it's not easy. It's really not easy. So next challenge accepted, and we're working on it.
Nice. Yeah, that's fantastic, and it's really important that it's great you're taking an active role in making those changes, because sustainability, and especially packaging and doing it in an eco-friendly way, has been a pretty hot topic now for a little while. It's really interesting seeing the ways people are getting around this and doing it. I think you're one of the first person I've spoken to that's actually said, well, I've gone and said no, and worked out how we need to do it differently, and been agreed that I can do it like that. I see a lot of people that try and work out how they can do it in what they're allowed to do. So it's quite nice that you're trying to change things.
Yeah, and I think you touched on something earlier, which was that by having the free post printed on the pouch, we've reduced the barriers for consumers to return the pouch. So if they had to put it in an envelope and apply a stamp, that's going to reduce the return rate. So we knew at that point we wanted to get that barrier down. Every barrier we can get rid of increases our chances of a return. And that's was key to us. It's the same with the 100% recycling part. We didn't want a pouch that was 99.9 or 99.5. It had to be 100%, because if not, there's still an issue. So we worked closely with PA Consulting, and we worked with the process. So we wanted to know from when it gets back to us, how does it get recycled? And I think the problem people have these days is that it's really difficult to find out exactly what happens, where it exactly ends up. So we made sure that diligence was done, because I don't like not knowing, because it's a surprise that we didn't want to find out in 3 years' time, 4 years' time. And it is difficult. We find it difficult with other things as well, that you don't know, can this go in this box? It just really is a minefield. But part of Sarah's role now is to actually go out and go through all of those waste routes to the very end to find out exactly where it ends up. And then once we understand the problem, we can put a better solution in or challenge the existing solutions.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, this is a pretty good solution for the moment. I think it's a really, really good idea. And I think you'll find it's working really well. You're right, just taking those steps out, and it's not, I think sometimes there's a lot of pressure put on because of the state of the world that you have to recycle and stuff. And I recycle what I can, but you can understand, like some days, like say you're a family and you've had a long day, and you might be like, actually, I'm not going to take that up the road, or we meaning to do it for ages, and you take the easy route. So I think any way that could be made easier for people, it will deliver a difference. And that's like the whole point, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the challenge that we face as businesses. And I think it's one we've got to embrace and get on with, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think just sort of getting towards the end now, I'd just like to really give you the floor if there's anything else you want to say, stuff that's going on with you guys. I think you've got an autumn edition due out, or it's out, and you've been recently named a cool brand. I saw that, and you had your anniversary recently as
Yeah,
well.
7 years in a blink. It's crazy to think. We always forget our birthday almost because it comes up on us so quick. So and this year I managed to hire a taco truck and it came out here and we all had a great taco night on the only day of sun that week. So we got really, really lucky. And it's just, yeah, it's been a brilliant 7 years. And we've recently bought a 200-year-old mill. I've driven past it for over 20 years. And I've loved it for over 20 years. I absolutely loved it. But, it went from being a kind of pie in the sky dream to now we own it, but it's still going to be a challenge. But like I said, we're a company that loves challenges. We're not going to walk away from it. This is a building with 200 years of history linked to this area. We want to go out there and make a stunning distillery, and we started the ball rolling. We've got some plans drawn up, and really excited. It's something that we're incredibly passionate about, but something that's going to be a real asset to the community as well. It's a much loved building.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's fantastic news. That's brilliant. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Lovely. Okay, we're probably getting to time now. So I would just like to say thank you so much for taking the time to speak. I know you must be extraordinarily busy. So thank you very much.
No, thank you very much. I really enjoyed that. It was great fun.
Yeah, it's great fun. I'm going to say goodbye to everyone and wrap things up. And then sometime in the next month, International Scottish Day is on the 1st of October, I should say. You will find that over the next month, you're probably not going to see this until the day, but I'm going to say this anyway. There'll just be a huge amount of build up. The supporters are incredible. They've got a huge array of amazing supporters that do lots of really cool projects and write-ups and work with amazing distilleries. So you'll be seeing a lot of that coming up, and I'm going to write a piece about this with this video embedded in there, so you will see that very soon. So I'm going to say goodbye to everybody watching and stop recording, and then I'll say goodbye to you, Martin, so every 2 seconds. Okay, goodbye.